Hi, I'm Caroline.
And I'm Adrian.
And this is Scandal Sheets. Hello and welcome to Scandal Sheets, the podcast dedicated to exposing the notorious people and places of the past. I am your host, Caroline.
And I'm Adrian.
And today we are wrapping up the story of Cassius Marcellus Clay.
Do you say Cassius instead of Cassius to identify the difference?
I don't know. That's a good question. But I found out in the course of the last bit of my research that his nickname was Cash.
Cash.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was like, wow, I could have really taken it easy on myself last time and just called him Cash.
I was trying to figure out where I remembered the name Cash, and it's the guy that's in Glow. Do you watch that show Glow about the gorgeous ladies of wrestling?
No, I do not.
It's amazing. But anyway, one of the characters, his name is Cash.
Really?
Yeah.
It's a
and
cool
I was
name.
wondering, I was like, what is that? Is it always short for Cassius? Or Cassius or whatever. I just don't know what else it would be a nickname for. That's funny. All right, sorry, I continue.
No.
Like,
I always think of Johnny Cash because he was...
No, it's Bash. It's not Cash. Sorry, it's Bash.
Bash?
Bastion. Sebastian.
Oh,
it's Bash.
yeah. Okay.
Rhymes with Cash.
I personally kind of find that hot. I'm trying to think of a movie or a book that I read once where the hero was Sebastian and they called him Bash and he was really hot.
Don't say the Shades of Grey books because I know that guy's name is Sebastian.
No, it's not.
Sebastian Gray?
No, it's Christian Grey.
Oh, so I'm like a little bit off on these names today, just enough to be like, oh, that's right. It follows. Bash, Cash, Sebastian, Christian.
That went downhill real quick.
It did. Usually we only do that at the end. Sorry, I totally started that. I'm sorry.
It's all your fault.
Well, I do like Caroline's new setup. So it's after Christmas. We're recording. Caroline benefited from Christmas. The podcast benefited from Christmas. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
So we have new technology also in the form of a tri-folding. It's like a sound booth kind of thing, like
a
around her microphone. So if any of you are old enough or have seen reruns of Home Improvement, it reminds me of Wilson, the neighbor, whose face you only saw from the nose up because I can't see Caroline's mouth. I can only see the top half of her face. And I immediately was like, oh my God, it's just like Home Improvement, where the neighbor talks to them over the fence, but you never see his whole face.
That's amazing.
I think eventually you see it, like maybe in the finale.
Yeah,
something.
right. Yeah, they finally showed him.
But so did you get other new stuff?
We got mini microphones that we can plug into my iPhone and go out into the world and film. Mm-hmm. So we will probably be doing some mini shows here in the future with video. So,
we've been talking about it, but now that we have the technology, it may become a reality.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Particularly as, once again, school is on the horizon for Caroline, which means, no time for me. So
well, you have another week, right?
Second week of January.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have to do something really quick. Just kidding.
I mean, we can. But anyway.
All right. Let's get back.
Yeah, we better do like a summary. Somebody should do a summary.
Okay, so Cassius Marcellus Clay was a 19th century politician born in Kentucky, raised on a plantation, inherited his father's slaves, and yet he ended up becoming an outspoken abolitionist.
Right.
And unlike some abolitionists of the time, he took it from an economic viewpoint.
That's right.
So, he said the South is basically being held back because we're clinging to this antiquated system.
Yeah. He wasn't in it for the right reasons necessarily. It's not because people were owning people. It was because he made an economic argument.
Right. Not
a humanitarian one.
Right, exactly. So he is an outspoken abolitionist in Kentucky, which is, I won't say it wasn't as crazy slave-driven as some states in the South, but in fact, they ended up, being neutral during the Civil War.
Really?
Technically they were, although it was more neutral from the perspective of
I didn't know that.
whatever army happened to be in the area would take over the capital, and it would become a Union state for a couple months, and then the Confederacy would come back and kick them out, and it would become a Confederate state again. So, and then eventually the Confederacy just set up a whole new capital in Bowling Green and operated out of there once the Union had taken back Frankfort.
Because that's the capital, right?
Right.
Not
Frankfort.
Lexington.
Correct, yeah. Anywho, so Cassius, he was the cousin of Henry Clay, who was the Great Compromiser.
So there were two Henry Clays. One was like revolutionary to mid 1800s. The other one was mid 1800s to 1884.
When we left off, Cash had opened up his own abolitionist newspaper in Lexington, Kentucky called The True American. And he basically felt that people wanted to talk about emancipation and were too afraid to. So he wanted to use the newspaper as a way to invite level-headed discussion.
It's like having a radio show where people can call in.
Right, exactly.
But it's in print.
Exactly. Only the people in Lexington were not very interested in that. And so he immediately had to fortify the newspaper building where he published it with a cannon.
Oh, they had to protect it. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And what did he put in the cannon?
He put...
Wasn't it something
gunpowder
crazy?
And nails.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, when you don't have a cannonball, you use nails
or
instead.
like a security service.
He was helped by a friend and the adjutant general of his military regiment that he served in. But this friend would eventually help him remodel his house, which Adrian's going to talk about later on. So, yeah, where we left him last time was that he had published this incredibly incendiary article in his newspaper in August of 1845. And he was sick with typhoid fever, which was very dangerous, could have killed him. And so he had to get up and confront the people who were rabble-rousing in town, calling for his blood, essentially, go out and basically defend himself. These people believed that he was calling for a slave insurrection. And so a mob of people confronted him at his house.
Is this where the cannon was or no?
No, unfortunately.
The cannon was not at the house.
Yeah. The cannon's at work, not at the house.
You need a work and a play cannon.
Oh, amen to that.
Or a residential and a commercial cannon.
I like that, yeah. We should write that into the local zoning code. You can have up to 2 cannons in a commercial setting and one in a residential setting.
Could go by square footage.
Right.
One cannon per 1,000 square feet.
Yeah. So I would get 1.2 cannons at my house.
I get about one, yeah.
So instead of defending himself to these people who were mobbing outside his house, he just said, I'm always going to be a defender of free speech. And this is what this was.
Sure.
And in response, he wrote an even more incendiary article and published it.
Does he want to die?
Apparently he does.
Okay.
No. The citizens decided that they had endured his ridiculous views long enough, and so they broke into the newspaper office and stole his printing equipment so he could no longer publish the paper.
I guess a cannon doesn't work unless somebody's there to
man it.
Man it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. They're like, oh, look at that cannon. Oh, let's just break in.
So he finally is on the mend from having typhoid fever, and he didn't let this, temporary stoppage keep him down. Instead, he just moved the offices across the river into Cincinnati. And started publishing the paper there. Yeah. He may have backed down, sort of, at least in Kentucky, but he did continue to preach the economic benefits of emancipation. And he continued to run for public office, which invariably made him a target. As we discussed last week, he was attacked at a political rally of one of his opponents.
That's right.
And ended up having to go to trial. They had charged him with inciting mayhem or something crazy like that, which I think should all be, a life goal for us in general.
Yeah, right. If there's something I want to be incarcerated for, I may have said that last time.
Yeah.
It would be inciting mayhem.
Right. Exactly.
I stand by that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
In 1849, he was, I don't believe he was actually running for office this time, but once again, he was kind of in a crowd and was confronted by someone who knew him and knew his beliefs. And so he was confronted by a follower of his political opponent, this person who had taken a stand against him. And this second time, he was not so lucky in terms of what happened. So the first time they tried to essentially assassinate him, the bullet that was fired at him lodged in his Bowie knife sheath, which was
saved him.
Right, was basically in his pocket in front of his heart.
Yeah,
and
this wasn't a duel. Someone just shot at him.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, in a crowd. So in this second time around,
was he in a duel? We talked about a duel, though.
Yes, he was.
That
also
was something
in duel.
else, and he lived. They both lived.
Yes,
because they were terrible shots.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. Continue.
No,
I was like, it's all coming back to me.
Yes. Part of his mystique was the fact that he was a hothead and frequently got into duels. He killed several people and somehow managed to live to tell about it. Yeah. So he's in this crowd in this political gathering, and an opposition person comes at him and actually managed to stab him this time in the chest. And in the crush of people, he was not able to pull out his Bowie knife, which he always carried to defend himself. Yeah. So one of his sons, who was with him at the time, was only 14. He drew a pistol from his pocket and tried to toss it to Cash. But the gun was knocked out of his hand. Cash, even though he wasn't able to draw his own weapon, just advances toward his attacker and grabs the attacker's knife with his bare hands. And they said that it cut him to the bone.
Yeah.
Him trying to pull it out. Yeah, I know. This is some serious adrenaline to be able to handle doing that.
Absolutely. I always think what I would do in a situation if I was attacked. Like, I mean, you see on TV shows and movies, but I'm like, would I have the capacity to
do that? Yeah.
Save myself or to, I don't know if I would. But I guess the heat of the moment, it's self-preservation. Yeah. It's a crazy story.
He managed to get the knife from his assailant and he stabbed the attacker.
Okay.
But by this time, he was stabbed himself.
Yeah.
And
he's bleeding.
Yeah, he's bleeding all over the place. He passes out.
Oh my God.
An associate of the original assailant approached Cash with a gun, intending to shoot him in the head, but the gun misfired. So,
of course it did.
I know. This guy is he's like a cat. He's got 9 lives.
Yeah.
Because you can't
that
kill
saying
him.
came from somewhere.
So he recovers and he goes back to being his usual pugnacious self for the next decade. During the 1850s, we are slowly sliding into war. And once the war was declared in 1861, President Abraham Lincoln, who was friendly with Cash, offered him the position of ambassador to Russia. Yeah. So Cash accepted, and off he goes to St. Petersburg, leaves his wife and his family here in the U.S., and while he's in St. Petersburg, Cash witnesses the freeing of all of Russia's serfs.
Oh.
So they basically had its own slavery system.
Oh.
If you were born into serfdom, you stayed in serfdom. There was no way you get out. So all of these serfs were free.
Okay. Then what do you do with those? There's that many more people that need jobs, are going to have to be paid for jobs, right? Because they were like slaves. They were not paid for their work. But I'm guessing it wasn't, they weren't sold into that.
You're basically attached to an estate.
They weren't human property.
Right.
Yeah. They're just nothing.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And now for something not so scandalous.
Stay tuned for more scandal sheets after the break. And now back to the show. So seeing so many people freed from slavery, essentially, inspired Cash to continue working for the emancipation of slaves back in America. So he comes back to the U.S.
Okay. During the war.
Yeah. He's back during the war, and offered him the position of general or major general, rather. Cash did serve during the Mexican War, so he wasn't entirely unfamiliar with military life, but he refused the appointment, stating that he would not fight for the Union unless Lincoln freed the slaves.
Oh.
So
now, wait, so is it not just about economics now? He's seen the humanitarian part of it after going to Russia, or no?
Maybe a little bit, yeah. I mean, he just basically is I'm not going to fight. He didn't believe they were fighting for slavery and that they should be.
That had to be the thing that it was about. I mean, it was, for us looking back, that's what but right then they didn't.
According to a recent article in Time Life magazine I think it was published around the time that Muhammad Ali died, and the whole concept of who is Cassius Clay